Kicking off this list at number 15, I have New Girl, which is one of my absolute favorite comfort shows. It's such a lighthearted, feel-good comedy that prioritizes friendship, celebrates awkwardness, and embraces imperfection. The show followed the interactions between these 5 people as they all deal with their respective social and romantic lives, and they all grow closer together as a family. The continuous on and off again relationships each character has with different people and with each other allowed for a fresh and engaging episode every time. Schmidt and Winston were my absolute favorites. Out of all the characters in the show, the 2 of them for me had the best comedic chops because anything they did or say never failed to crack me up. It's a show that embodies chaotic goodness at its finest, which is like the perfect creme de la creme to a great sitcom. Mr. Robot has to be one of, if not the most unique and most original TV show that I've ever came across. The story of Mr. Robot brilliantly covers several issues that affect us every day, including depression, identity, and the plight our society structure forces on many of us. The production value is absolutely breathtaking because the way how each shot can tell you loads of things about what's going on with each character and how that affects the story. Throughout the series' 4-season run, it just kept getting better and better with every episode, which leads to a very tense, yet a very satisfying ending. From the fantastic writing, the incredible acting, the background music, and the mind-bending plot twist is all what makes Mr. Robot so brilliant. Now, I'm a huge sucker for the gangster genre, so I don't think it should be much of a surprise that Peaky Blinders was gonna crack my top 15. Loosely based on the short-lived gang of the same name, Peaky Blinders tells an ambitious story about the Shelby family and their rise to power in both the criminal underworld of Birmingham and the UK government during the 1920s. Primarily focused on the determined yet ruthless leader of the Peaky Blinders, Thomas Shelby, played by Cillian Murphy, this sweeping crime drama shines a bright light on the gritty world of post-World War I politics, and it does it with charismatic performances, unforgettable characters, and brilliant twists to spare. From the searing work of Cillian Murphy in the lead role to the encapturing performances of co-stars Paul Anderson, the late Helen McCrory as Aunt Polly, and even the amazing Tom Hardy as Alfie Solomons, Peaky Blinders is a show that never loses sight of its themes or characterization. Futurama's success stems from its unique blending of genres. At once an adult animation, a sitcom, its often dark humor and analysis of human behavior and interactions has made it a cult favorite series. From the mind of the creator of The Simpsons, Matt Groening, a delivery boy from the 20th century who gets frozen by accident for 1,000 years, he wakes up in the year 3000 and begins working at a delivery service where he and the crew have all kinds of misadventures, a great concept for a sitcom. But what makes Futurama so special is its incredible inventiveness. Each episode feels completely original, which is a unique feature among sitcoms. Each story goes somewhere unexpected and ends up circling back in the most beautiful way, a testament to the magnificent writing staff that worked on Futurama. A daring, weird, hilarious, and heartwarming show, Futurama beats all the odds to win the hearts of fans worldwide.
I am the stone that the builder refused. I am the visual, the inspiration that made ladies sing the blues. I'm the spark.
Now, I fucking love The Boondocks. I was an addict for this show. I remember watching it when I wasn't even allowed to watch it because I remember me and my sisters would stay up past midnight to watch this on Adult Swim because it was just so fucking good. Based on the comic strips of the same name by Aaron Magruder, The Boondocks was such a raw, irreverent sitcom that provided a commentary on American politics from a black perspective. It was an adult show that wasn't just explicit for the sake of shock factor because through the family of the Freemans, it explored a mixture of culture, lifestyle, race, and stereotypes that account for both comedic and dramatic aspects of the series. Grazing upon the controversial events of the 2000s, Aaron Magruder did such a superb job of challenging the audience on topics they wouldn't usually think or talk about. While The Boondocks' harrowing content may have divided critics, but in the end, it paid off because of its blatantly satirical look on American society. The less said about the 4th season, the better. For somebody like me who grew up watching Cartoon Network all the time growing up, I remember coming across regular show, didn't really know what to make of it at first, but over time, it instantly became one of my favorite animated shows of all time. This was unlike anything I've ever seen on a Cartoon Network show because of how it was quite surreal in its humor and narrative style. Created by J.G. Quintel, the series follows Mordecai and Rigby, 2 best friends who are slackers working at a park, who are always trying to get out of their work and have fun, but every time it happens, it always leads them into some kind of big supernatural battle. Every single character on on the show stood out on their own because of how they all had their fair share of hope and angst. Alongside the hilarity, regular show had such a great way of handling mature themes, along with over-the-top violence that made it quite controversial, but it made it so fantastic at the same time. Now, like most people who are so infatuated with the show, when Stranger Things emerged on Netflix back in the summer of 2016, I was instantly glued to it. The strongest aspect that Stranger Things has working in its favor is its incredible development of characters and relationships. At its core, the show is a small-town mystery horror that superbly draws inspirations of the minds of Steven Spielberg and Stephen King while merging it with 80s pop culture. But there's more to it than that. By using a compelling set of young actors to create added empathy and thrills to the story, the show is also a coming-of-age drama, a quirky comedy, and a searing tale of identity and personal relationships. Even though the overarching story can feel a bit directionless at times, Stranger Things is such a fantastic show that is charming, bittersweet, nostalgic, tragic, and very funny. With great performances and stellar scares, it's such an absolute blast all the way through. For nearly 15 years, Supernatural was the CW's longest running show. For me to say that it was the network's flagship show would be a huge understatement. Whether if it was necessary for the show to go on for a total of 15 seasons, the show's impact and longevity cannot be denied. The series is a tale about two brothers, Sam and Dean Winchester, who take on the mantle of their father as they travel across the country to hunt down demons, ghosts, monsters, and other supernatural creatures. But it's much more than that, because it's also a show about family at its core. With a bond between two brothers, a twisted family history, and a past being uncovered piece by piece is all what makes Supernatural such a pure delight for me. With 327 episodes over its run, the series is packed with episodes that give me a good laugh, a good scare, and even episodes that have made me cry. And while Supernatural definitely had its drawbacks, with the show overstaying its welcomes, concerning the fact that the series creator Eric Kripke originally intended for the show to end in season 5, and come to think about it, I feel like that would have been a much more fitting ending than the actual ending that we got in season 15. But even if the later seasons weren't quite as phenomenal as the first 5 were, it still had a plethora of moments that were still worth watching. Despite the show's drawbacks, Supernatural remains one of the best fantasy TV series of all time, and it'll forever be a shining example of a CW show at its finest. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of those TV shows that became an instant favorite of mine. There's a very good reason why it's one of the most groundbreaking TV shows of all time. When Buffy the Vampire Slayer emerged during the big TV boom of the late 90s, where almost every major TV show was headlined by men. But when this show came along, giving us one of pop culture's greatest heroines in Buffy Summers, it made for such a refreshing sight. Over the course of 7 seasons, the show superbly blended drama, teen angst, supernatural fiction, horror, action, gut-wrenching agony, and some of the most endearing storytelling the world has ever seen, and one of the most beautifully balanced television series. The show has taught me so many lessons, like the importance of allowing yourself to open up and rely on your loved ones, or being brave by just living. Especially the way how it masterfully demonstrates by using monsters as metaphors for things that we all deal with on a regular basis. Throughout the show's run, Buffy gave me iconic episodes such as The Body, Hush, The Wish, Becoming, and so many others that still hold a special place in not only the heart of diehard Buffy fans like myself, but the pop culture zeitgeist. Sarah Michelle Gellar absolutely slayed it as Buffy Summers, pun intended, because of how she always had something else to bring to the role with every season by balancing all the different aspects of Buffy's life with a striking maturity and complexity. Despite the fact that the show was created by the deplorable piece of shit himself, Joss Whedon, Buffy still remains a cult classic 25 years later, and it'll slay forever. Smallville explored Superman's youth in a tutorial town, but its real objective was to humanize Clark Kent and his journey on becoming the world's greatest superhero. While Christopher Reeve's Superman was and will always be iconic, Tom Welling's take on Superman defined a generation. Throughout its 10-season run, the show successfully succeeded by placing emphasis on the relationships Clark shared with his family, friends, and the people of Smallville. The show had a dual purpose as an adaptation of the Superman origin tale. Although it may have initially started with a formulaic villain of the week plot, Smallville eventually progressed into much more of an epic narrative that connected all the facets of the DC mythos. Smallville wasn't just about about Clark Kent's journey because with every great hero always needs a great villain. Because with Tom Welling's Superman, it had Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor. Michael Rosenbaum to this day still remains the best Lex Luthor we've ever gotten. Not only did he nail the look of Lex Luthor, but he also brought depth to the character as he initially started off being very good friends with Clark, and the series did such a brilliant job of demonstrating how they became bitter rivals in the later seasons. Every scene with Lex and Clark was always a home run because they had such impeccable chemistry with each other. Even with the show being released over 2 decades ago, Smallville is a show that still holds up and is without question one of the greatest achievements in superhero media produced in the 21st century.
You're not the boss of me now. You're not the boss of me now.
Now, there are tons of reasons why I love Malcolm in the Middle so much. Not just because it was a great sitcom that didn't need a laugh track at all to prove how funny it could be. It was because of how relatable and how realistic it felt. Unlike most family sitcoms, Malcolm in the Middle had much more of an honest representation of the financial burden that comes with having a family, especially a family with 4 and later 5 children. It's like a combination of being a comedy and a coming-of-age story about a dysfunctional family that just happens to be struggling to meet ends meet. The more I rewatch it, the more I just really appreciate how the show managed to develop every single member of the family into 3-dimensional characters. While Malcolm may have been the lead of the show, Lois and Hal were my absolute favorites, especially Bryan Cranston as Hal. I find it so mind-blowing that Cranston went from playing Malcolm's fun-loving yet immature father Hal to eventually becoming Walter White in Breaking Bad. That just really proves how much of a brilliant, versatile actor Bryan Cranston can be. And while sure the last 3 seasons paled in comparison to how great the first 4 seasons were, Malcolm in the Middle was still more original and far more ambitious than any other sitcom airing throughout its tenure, which is one of the main reasons why the show has stood the test of time. I mean, come on, do I really need to explain how much I love the original Teen Titans? I honestly have no words to explain how fucking awesome this show is. From the anime-inspired visuals, the brilliant storytelling, and the dynamic choice of characters, whether if it's Dick Grayson's Robin, Raven, Cyborg, Starfire, and Beast Boy. Teen Titans offered audiences a delicate balance between straight-up silliness and a more mature approach to superhero storytelling. It was such a perfect mix of action, comedy, and character-driven stories. Every member of the Titans got a chance to shine, getting at least one focused episode per season. They all played off each other so well, and with that, not only did that make them a stronger team, but it also made their friendship stronger as well. Plus, the show also featured villains like Brother Blood, The Hive, Red X, and most notably Slade, aka Deathstroke, voiced by Ron Perlman. I could honestly keep going on and on about this show, but simply put, Teen Titans was just such a standout success that was way ahead of its time. Now, this is a show that takes me back all the way to my childhood. There's just so much that I love about the 90s Spider-Man incarnation, considering the length that the creators went to adapt some of the most iconic storylines from the 60s comics. The series focused on Peter Parker's college years as he tries to balance having a personal life with regular people, and I got so much story about him that feels more mature and reaches as an older audience. There was action, drama, romance, mystery, and even some elements of horror. In addition, it also had classic and modern villains that were well represented. The supporting cast all added something to the proceedings, and an outstanding voice cast of actors. Come to think about it, upon multiple rewatches, I've realized how the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie pretty much followed the same story beats from the show. Like, I didn't even realize it until now that the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy is pretty much like an 80% adaptation from the show, which really took me by surprise. And well, yeah, the series was far from perfect because there were a couple things that held it back, whether if it came to the obvious censorship, the way they would use some certain scenes in different episodes, and there were a few storylines that may have dragged on a little bit too long. Despite the notable censorship, Spider-Man the Animated Series is without doubt one of the best animated shows Marvel has ever produced, and it will always have a special place in my heart. Avatar: The Last Airbender was fantasy entertainment at its quintessential best. To say that the show is a masterpiece would be a humongous understatement. Despite the series being a quote-unquote children's show, it took such an unflinching look at the horrors of both war and toxic family relationships. It literally had everything that you want in a story, and it did it all so perfectly well. It had endearing characters that were written to perfection, amazing action sequences, beautiful visuals, and capturing drama, logical story structure, complex villains, profound philosophical messages, and on top of all that, a thoroughly satisfying conclusion. From its art direction, characters, and touching themes such as genocide and war is what made the show so successful. For over the past decade and a half, the show has become a cult classic. It has had a huge impact on pop culture and society. I strongly considered putting The Last Airbender as my number one. I really thought about this so hard, but there's just one more show that I like just a tad bit more.
Now this is a story all about how my life got flipped, turned upside down.
Now, I'm pretty sure most of y'all should have known that Fresh Prince was going to top my list, because come on, who doesn't love this fucking show? There are loads of reasons why the show has remained relevant for the past 3 decades. From the iconic opening theme song, which is one of the best in television history, the way it catapulted Will Smith to being the A-list movie star that he is today, to Carlton Banks' iconic dance routine, and the fact that the show was just genuinely funny. The Fresh Prince wasn't purely a sitcom, it also did such a superb job of touching on some sensitive topics and highlighting certain issues, because when shit got real in the show, shit got real. And of course, I cannot mention this show without talking about the late yet eternally great James Avery as the family's patriarch Philip Banks. James Avery was a master of moving between all-out comedy and hard-hitting drama. He made Philip Banks the funniest man on screen, but also the biggest role model and a remarkable voice of wisdom whose approach to life is also affecting to this day over 3 decades later. He was the best. I could honestly keep going on, but simply put, The Fresh Prince was, still, and will always be my number 1 favorite TV show of all time, and that's something that will never, ever change.